Hi, everybody. We're back and we're ready to kick this off. Thank you so much for joining us today, asifa-hollywood members, for this special look, hand painting Namoo with Erick Oh and Baobab Studios. Welcome, asifa-hollywood members. I'm Jennifer Wolf, writer and journalist, and I'd love to introduce Erick Oh, an Oscar-nominated filmmaker whose films have been introduced and awarded at numerous festivals, including the Annies, Annecy, Anima Fest Zagreb, SIGGRAPH, and Anima Mundi. With a background in fine art from Seoul National University and film school at UCLA, Erick became an animator at Pixar from 2010 to 2018. Erick directed Pig, the Dam Keeper poems, much beloved, which won the Cristal at Annecy in 2018. His recent project Opera was nominated for an Academy Award at this year's just past award ceremony for Best Animated Short. And Erick joined Baobab Studios to create Namoo and will be working on a variety of projects in animation and elsewhere. And also will continue to contribute to the contemporary art scene in the US and South Korea. So welcome, Erick. And for any of you who may not be aware, Baobab Studios has been nominated for an Emmy Award 9 times. And they're a world leader in independent interactive animation. They were named most innovative company by Fast Company in 2018. And the company is currently led by writer and director Eric Darnell from Ants and all 4 Madagascar films. In addition to Namoo, Baobab has released short film projects and interactive projects Invasion, Asteroids, Jack, Crow the Legend, Bonfire, and just this year, Baba Yaga. And the studio also executive produced Paper Birds, part 1, which came out last year, and part 2 this year. And Baobab Studios projects have starred some really incredible talents, including Oprah, John Legend, Ali Wong, Kate Winsett, Daisy Ridley, Glenn Close, Lupita Nyong'o, Jennifer Hudson, Edward Norton, and oh my gosh, Diego Luna, swoon. Several projects are currently being adapted into books, films, games, original series, and more. So today, joining Erick, we have Eusong Lee. He served as art director of Namoo. Nick Ladd, lead Quill artist and animator on Namoo. Vanessa Rojas, editor. And Kane Lee, who, in addition to serving as producer on Namoo, is also head of content for Baobab. So thank you, all of us, for joining us today. This is going to be really, really cool. Erick, I'd love to have you say a quick hello, maybe set up the film for us briefly, and then for all of you watching along, we'll have a link and password so you can watch the film.
Of course. Hey, Jennifer, thank you so much for amazing intro, and thank you for having us at asifa-hollywood. My name is Erick Oh, and I'm here with amazing Baobab artists who made Namoo together. Namoo means tree in Korean. So this film is about literally tree of memories. It follows after one person's life from his birth all the way to the last chapter of his life. And it's about 12 minutes short. And I hope this warms your heart. And then after this film, we prepare for a 10-minute presentation of how we made it. And then followed by a Q&A session with the folks over here. One interesting thing about this film is, the way how we made film is entirely done by state-of-the-art technology of VR. So something you would like to look out and something we'll definitely talk about afterwards. So yeah, without further ado, I'd love to share the link, the private link. Jennifer, I think you are going to share the private link with us. And then we're going to split for, yeah. I think we're going to watch it from our own machine, our own device, and we're going to get together. So I can do the countdown so that everyone can start playing together.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just one moment, let me grab this link and
yeah, I'm grabbing this link too. So it's
there we have it.
There we go. I kind of got it too.
Thank you.
Yeah. So basically, hope you guys get this link up in your computer, and then I can give you guys a minute, and then.
Oh, you know what? I don't think
Yeah.
that went to our general audience. Let me just try to do that
Oh,
one
yeah,
more
please.
time.
Yeah, please.
Not a problem. We'll get it to everyone. And
Sorry about that.
no. Here we go.
There we
All
go.
right. Everyone should be seeing a Vimeo link along with a password. We're asking you, please don't share. This is for today's presentation. We're very fortunate to have this exclusive look at the film. So enjoy and come on back as soon as you're done.
Thank you so much. Enjoy, guys.
Well, all right. I hope everybody has had a chance to watch the film and is coming back here now. Eric has a wonderful presentation to share with us about the making of Namoo. So Eric, if you'll share that with us.
Of course. Yeah, thank you for watching today. First of all, I'm here with Kane Lee, the producer of Namoo and from Baobab. Eusong Lee, art director, all this beautiful art design you just watched, that's this guy. And then you got Nick Led, who the main Quill artist. I am going to talk about what he did, but he's really the soul and the root and the trunk of the film. And then Vanessa, our editor, so she'll be able to share her insight during the Q&A session. So I'll begin with sharing my screen. So after this, I'll bring in all the artists. But for now, let me share my screen. Please see if this is all. Are you guys all seeing this?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So the story travels a little back in time, actually. So this is a photo of myself. That's that little boy, that's me. And I'm with my grandfather. And then we are wearing hanbok, that's Korean costume, traditional costume. And then the story came to me when actually my grandfather passed away 10 years ago. So that was my first time experiencing saying goodbye to someone who was very close to me. So that got me to think a lot about, the life and death and all and beyond. So during the grieving process, I made this little drawings just for myself, almost like a picture book diary. And as you can tell, it's a story of a man who hangs his memory and belongings to his own tree. And then I really kept it inside of me. I never shared it with anyone else because, it was too much for me to share it, with everybody. So I moved on. That's when I was still at school. So I graduated, went to Pixar, where I spent one of my amazing time, about 6 years. And then after Pixar, I moved on to make other short films that includes The Dam Keeper or Opera. Some of you guys may be familiar with. And aside with my career, my life also moved on too. So that little girl is my niece, my sister's newborn child. And then being able to see a newborn coming to life, that was another phenomenal experience. And then on your left, that's my father, that's my dad holding my niece's hands. And of course, in the middle, that's me with my niece. And on the right, you see the cemetery where my grandfather is at. So somewhere almost 2 years ago, I had this inner calling that maybe this is about time. This is about time for me to finally take this idea of tree and share it with the world. And then I went back to this painting again. This is also the painting I did 10 years ago. And then this became the root of the entire production. So I started from here. And one of the first artists I talked to was Eusong Lee, who's here with us today. And then this film is all about passage of time. And then telling the story through light and color was so important. And to me, Eusong was so good at art directing in terms of the lighting and color. So he was the best fit for this project. So I reached out to him. Thankfully, all right, Eric, let's give it a try. So that's how our journey started together. So here you see one of the early concept art he did. He literally took everything to the next level. And after this painting, he kept on exploring. So here's the color script he did in the early production. So one of the thing about story again is it goes through the changes in seasons. And especially not strictly in California, but I was raised in Korea most of my life, especially my childhood. And Korea, just like East Coast, it has a clear 4 seasons: spring, summer, fall, and winter. And that was really one of the ingredients for this project as well. So as you can see here, it starts from the spring, and where the newborn child comes in, and then it's like a white canvas. We don't have much color. We have a lot of breathing rooms. And then as the boy grows, as the tree grows, we have more colors and materials coming in. And that's when we start learning about all these values and things about life. And we go to summer full of life and youth. And then we go through some dark moments and some lowest moments in your life. And we get into fall and then winter, which all again connects back to the spring. So that has to be all captured within this timeline and within this color script. And as you can see here in the extended color script, you can even track this emotional arc and where the character is, with this color, right? Different weathers and seasons, climates, and lighting of the day and night. All those are fully captured in this color palette. So as much as the color and the tone, the shape of the tree itself was truly important as well. I mean, when the tree is young, it actually doesn't have any particular shape. And then it's so easy for us to track what objects are being hung. Oh, there's a pacifier, there's a flush doll, there's a cute little toys, and there's a books. And then that really represent our childhood. When you're a child, you just get hold on to all those significant memories that become the core memory of you. And then shape of the tree is free, which means we are full of potential. Its identity is still building, right? But as you age, as you grow, your tree starts forming. So and it represents individual life stage in your life. For example, on the top left, heart-shaped tree, that's when you meet the love of your life. And on the bottom, it's distorted, ugly looking tree, but that's when sometimes you're feeling like you're losing yourself. When you feel like everything's falling apart and there's nothing you could do about it. And then the moon shape, when you feel like, oh, there's a huge emptiness in my heart, but that cannot be fulfilled. That's the representation of that type of a life stage. But at the end, after going through all these ups and downs, you will eventually find your balance, and you'll be able to create your own tree, which is, no matter what, beautiful. So that's really the core concept of the tree and Namoo. And then Eusong and I went over different directions too. So basically, here are some examples. Some tree designs we played around with the leaves to support the idea. But after going over many different routes, we ended up coming back to original ideas. Okay, no leaves. Let's just really be true to this poetic reality, where a surrealistic reality where it's all about the object and the belongings. So here it is. This is after going through many different routes, this is where we landed. This is the master key concept art Eusong developed, and we all fell in love with this art, and this is it. This is the film we like to watch. So next thing I was planning to do was, okay, with these beautiful artworks and colors and this story we developed, how are we gonna put nicely together to execute? That's when we invited this high-end technology called Quill. Some of you may not be familiar with this tool. This is the virtual reality software that's developed by Meta, previously Facebook Oculus. So it really enables the artist to get into the headset, the virtual space. You are in your virtual space with your headset, and then you can draw and paint and animate and create movements very intuitively, in this 3D space. So even though we are talking about high-end state-of-the-art technology, ironically, it frees you from all these technical limitations. So I was able to have fun with the creative parts right away, immediately. So here is what you see. That's our Nick Lett, one of our main artists. We have Nick here today. I mean, he doesn't have the beard today, but that's him. That's what you see, the timeline, color palette, and just like Photoshop, you start drawing, you start animating intuitively. One biggest reason why we ended up choosing Quill, many reasons, was the aesthetics and style and look. So because what we are trying to do is very hand touch to the traditional tactile texture warmth feeling. We needed a software that could achieve that, without going through too many layers. So as you can see here on your left, we got the Eusong's original artwork done in 2D in Photoshop. And then there's a Quill Nick painted from the scratch, in 3D. So it's really even hard to tell which is which. So this was exactly why we ended up using Quill to bring life to this project. And here's another example. And on your left, you got Photoshop painting, and on your right, Quill painting. If you swap the image, I can't even tell which is which. So that is exactly why we used Quill. And then even the characters too. So on the top line, you see the drawings Eusong and I did. And then on the bottom, Nick did single-handedly in such a quick turnaround. So that's what Quill does to you. So just to give you a little more specific ideas, this is how we draw and paint and move the design of the drawings. It's actually really fun as a creator. And when you animate, it challenges you to use all your different, creative brains, so it's a fun mixed up combination of 2D traditional animation, puppet animation, stop motion animation, and also CG animation, because you will have to see things, three-dimensionally, but no interpolation, no in between frames are done by computer. So everything is basically hand animated. So in a way, it's very similar to 2D animation. And you can even, and this, as you can see here, it's almost like puppeteering. If you are working on the actual puppet model in real life, this is what you do. Grab your model or painting and move around, and it starts moving frame by frame. And here's one example of how we actual production shot. And Nick here is animating the toy car, and frame by frame, he's actually moving toy car around. And he can even do the squash and stretch by distorting it. He'll do that over here, like that, which is really fun. So with that technology, the overall filmmaking process was the same. Always starts from this singular drawing. This is one thumbnail drawing from my 2D storyboard. It's all about the story. It's all about flow and rhythm. And then after that, Eusong took it over and explore further on the art and the color. And then after that, I provided much more detailed descriptions on which object should be on the ground, which object should be on the tree, and then what's happening on the ground, what's happening to the tree or the boy. So with all those information, again, Eusong took everything nicely together in one singular painting. And then again, Nick hands over to redesign everything, recreate everything in VR. And in the middle, I've been giving Nick from notes through all I could. Sometimes I went inside the Quill virtual reality directly to make notes directly, or sometimes I provided some drawings from outside in 2D design to get that attractive poses. And after all those, with the minimal last post After Effects special effects, here we are, the final frame. And here's more examples of the drawings I provided, Glenkin style. So, and then, so at the end of the day, we were making the theatrical version. So finding that right posture for the cinematography, right camera was really, really important. And so here are some comparisons between my early 2D guide animation and also and the finished rendered shot. Another example, where the heart pops down and the boy falls in love with the girl and the puppy, of course. So that's really it. As you can see here, look how the same but the different these two images are. On your left, you've got the drawing literally 10 years ago, and then the screen capture from our finished 12-minute short. And this was really thanks to many people's love and help, especially in this room, from Baobab and external Baobab artists. They were this is amazing international collaboration. You know, Nick is in Canada even now, and we got another main artist from Germany and Connecticut, East Coast, and Los Angeles, and even myself, I was in Korea for the most of the time. So it was a amazing international collaboration. So even though this is really based on my life, I really hope, you know, for example, the art and painting here is almost like a metaphor. It's a symbol of the dream or what you truly believes in and what makes you who you are. So even though, you know, it's coming from deeply personal space, I really hope it's universal enough for everybody to resonate with and find themselves in the story. So that's a brief summary of how we made Namoo. So now we can actually bring in Nick, Vanessa, Kane, Eusong, and then Jennifer hopefully help us moderate this Q&A session.
Absolutely. Eric, thank you so much for giving us that inside look at how Namoo was made. And yes, we definitely have questions for all of you. Before we dive in, for those of you watching along, we have a Q&A feature that you should see at the bottom of your Zoom window. Any questions you have, please put them there. And if it's not something that we already cover during the discussion, we'll do our best to get to those. And thank you. Okay, you know, I'd love to start with Kane. Kane, Baobab is known for doing VR, but has expanded to film, TV, books, and games. And I'd love to know why you decided to do this as a 2D animated short.
Yeah, the expansion into all those different areas has been really organic. I think a lot of people from our studio come from different disciplines, so there's like an openness to that. But specifically for working with Eric and with Namoo, I think there are two reasons. First of all, we always just have to fall completely in love with the creative. Eric and I both happened to be in Seoul, South Korea 2 summers ago when he showed me some of his earliest artwork. You saw of an old man looking up at a tree. Something he tucked away deep in his heart for almost a decade. And I knew when he pitched me this concept for Namoo that the timing was now, that it was very special, and that and then, you know, maybe within 2 months later, he was back at our studio in San Francisco and leaving a room of my colleagues in complete tears. And then second, you know, why a 2D short? I think the advantage of being a young studio that values innovation is that there's a real openness to every idea and also a belief, which we all share, you know, starting with our Chief Creative Officer, Eric Darno, all the way down, that the most compelling stories and the most unforgettable characters can transcend mediums. So we try not to get too hung up on the either or of like VR or a 2D short or a movie or a graphic novel. We just try to be really honest about what's the best thing out there, what's the best way to tell it, and if it's something that will push us to grow as a team of artists in a meaningful way. And with Namoo, we felt we had such an amazing opportunity to collaborate for the first time with Eric and to do something totally different and new and special together with him. I always remember this quote from Charles Solomon, the animation historian, who called some of Eric's prior work the filmic equivalent of haiku, which is such a unique way to describe anyone's work. So we felt it would be a great challenge in hearing the concept of Namoo, because it was so poetic, to try to tell a completely animated poem in the form of a 2D short, and to allow traditional theatrical cinema to do what it does best, which is, you know, that what Ebert called like the ultimate empathy machine, to inspire our audience to really put themselves into the life of a character. And in our case, the birth, the life, and the death of a character in under 12 minutes. So it was just like a challenge that we couldn't resist.
Thank you. So Eusong, Eric has called you the beating heart of this film. And I would love if you could tell us more about how the two of you developed this visual style.
Yeah. Well, thanks for such nice words. Telling me that I'm beating hard. I have to take that out. Been just very busy on that. But yeah, I mean, I think the art style kind of came along quite naturally along the film. To summarize like what it exactly is, I think I can always wrap my head around as if it's like watercolor inspired and 2D application on 3D film. And then that is factoring in a lot of different things, such as the technology part of it, but also the tone of the film. As an art director, it's not very common to come around with such abstract and at the same time giving out very clear message to the audience. So I felt very lucky about it. But I also knew that finding the right tone and the right mood for every scene was very important. And that's, along top of the designs, that a lot of it has to do with the color and filling out the passage of time and without repeating, but having it feel correct to that certain age. So I think the biggest thing is the passage of time, which you might have seen, you already saw in the presentation. But on top of that, I think a lot of it has to do with the negative space. Like what I love about the film is that there's a lot of areas where audience can immerse themselves, reflect themselves to the character throughout the passage of the person's life. And I wanted the art to give out the same kind of airiness, the atmosphere. So balancing those abstract aesthetics that is inspired a lot by watercolor is a big part of what drove the art direction. And along the way, Eric had a lot of the initial drawings that he had in the very beginning, which was main inspiration for that style. Hope that kind of answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And Vanessa, we just watched an entire person's life unfold in under 12 minutes. And that's really no small feat. Sometimes there's a lot of action and sometimes there's a lot of stillness. Can you tell us about some of the challenges you faced in editing a life story whittled down into, the form of an animated short?
Well, I have to say that challenge that's not much of a challenge. I feel like the team and Eric and Nick and also everybody, the whole team actually made that part rather easy in terms of creating that beautiful VR experience in Quill. That was already done. I mean, it existed in sort of a complete form when I got a handle on it and had to turn that into a cinematic version. So the challenge much more on from an editorial perspective was in that translation actually. Because, when you have the building block of VR being something where cues happen in space, that's the way you tell the story is cues in space, lighting cues, sound cues. That's a really different language than cinema, which is shot-based, close-ups, lens choices, all of that. So it's just a different language, which then just by its sheer nature of being a different language, it changes pace. So for me, the challenge was much more in the repacing of the story and the information given. For example, a shot that in VR would just play out on a certain length when something else would come in, if something else came in to take a viewer's attention somewhere else, that might not be the same timing. If it's a close-up and you're trying to learn something about a character in this close-up, the timing would be very different. So it was more that playing around that was much more the really great challenge. It's the challenge of what it is to translate something in general. And I personally love I love limitations. I think that's where the most creativity comes out, is when, you're given something and then now turn it into this other thing, but still keep the spirit of the story alive. And that was my job. And I was lucky to have a great team to help support that change, because it was not easy, but very, very rewarding.
Nice. Nick, we'd love to hear more about the use of Quill and Namoo from you. It's amazing. There's no frame interpolation in the animation, and you had to actually paint every single frame. What was that like?
Well, I mean, it's an interesting challenge, but it's one that's actually quite intuitive as a workflow, because for me, coming from a background in illustration and a background in 3D animation, I mean, the reason I gravitated towards Quill was really to combine those two passions of mine, the 2D illustration and 3D animation. So being able to create these illustrative worlds in 3D without needing a lot of technical know-how and work with shaders is really amazing, and it's really what helped elevate Namoo. And just the translation of the artwork from Eusong into 3D using Quill was really a seamless one-to-one process, going right from basically just redrawing them in a 3D way and then being able to animate them with our hands gave it a personalized feeling that we wouldn't have gotten if we animated it really any other way.
And so does Quill allow you to select various angles while you're working within the space and you're animating?
So it's more like working on a stop motion film or a diorama. So you can set some cameras, but the initial film was animated with the we kind of animated the film not twice, but we treated shots a bit differently in the VR version versus the 2D version. So for the 2D version, we were setting virtual cameras and we were able to look through those and say, oh, how does this look from that angle? And we would kind of do exports. But for the VR version, you're really in the environment with these characters. They were around you. So you were trying to look at them from their perspective. So from their height, their area, it wasn't watching a film on a screen, it was existing in this world with those characters. So in a way we could set angles, and we did for the 2D version, but for the VR version, we really had to place ourselves in the where the viewer would be and just be able to look around 360 and kind of make sure the environment looked good and the character looked good from their level.
Oh, this is just such an incredible technological achievement. Kane, what would you say you are most proud of from the Namoo team as far as this great achievement?
I would say, it's kind of related to something I said earlier about how we are always trying to push ourselves with every new project that we take on. And I really think that every single member of this crew and this team was pushing themselves to do the most ambitious thing, like in Quill, like Nick did, or working in VR for the very first time, like Eric did, which he did like such a pro. Our production manager had never even managed a production crew before. It was Baobab's first time having an entirely remote pipeline, working across 3 continents and 5 or 6 different time zones ever. And we happened to decide on doing that several months before the pandemic hit. And doing so was unintentionally serendipitous for the production because we weren't as affected as other productions were. So this sort of willingness by every team member to try to do something new and to not be afraid to make mistakes and go through the messiness of working with new technologies and innovations, and then all of it sort of coming together on a creative level that I think felt very 1 + 1 = 3 to me, where we actually had the story of the main character unfolding in front of you, but then we also had behind them the story of the tree, and sometimes they're interacting with each other, and sometimes the tree does something for him, and sometimes he responds to the tree, and then it all sort of comes together in this very sort of poetic way. And I feel like this was a very multifaceted story that is deceptively very simple on the outside, but you can watch it several times and people find different meanings and contact us all the time to say, oh, did you mean this? And I think that is the beauty of having a narrative poem where you do have an overarching story, but one that might require several viewings to understand how you might want to interpret it, how you might want to put yourself into this spiritual journey, not just a human journey, but something that starts somewhere and maybe ends in the same place. So I think all of that sort of combined, happening during this really unique time in human history, compounding on all that, just felt very, very special. So yeah, I think it was just all the different parts coming together, trying something new for the first time, and then coming, resulting in something much greater than we had expected.
Oh, that's so cool. A song. We'd love to talk to you about the lighting. The film goes through all these different seasons, and those are reflected in, you know, all the frames. Tell us how was that achieved?
I think it'll be easier for me to like explain if I think more about the artistic side and then maybe technical side as well, and I'll invite Nick on that as well. I think artistically, like the season was a huge idea that drove the whole color sets, and starting from like the infant, very pastel color, to the summer, fall, and that's where like the characters start aging and going through different ups and downs. And the biggest thing that I always wanted to do was, even though it's the same sunset, or even though it's same kind of blue sky, like how do I achieve like blue sky for kids that's been viewed from the kid's perspective versus a sky that was viewed from older person, and how it might feel different, like, and that kind of gave me a lot of ideas to how to specifically assign a certain color scheme to each age group. And moving on to that, the tricky part is that even though this film has, you know, different lightings as many as the scenes, basically, and the challenge was that every scene has to be like hand painted, like lighting wise as well. Even though it is a 3D film, it doesn't have, you know, global light or spotlight like 3D tools that we are familiar with. Like Nick and Dan had to actually hand paint every rim light and every shadow, and we did so many different iterations of different styles of shadow. Like all these little things came together to create sense of lighting, even though it's not like real lighting. But I think that limitation is what made the style much more like easy to read, more stand out that way, because we are focusing on what really gives an impression versus making it look realistic. I think that quite helped to create a certain style of lighting. But when it comes to how crazy this production was for lighting and shadow, I mean, Nick can chime in anytime if you want to. But yeah, it was a very unique way of working, quite similar to the way 2D would work, but in 3D space mostly.
So would you say that was absolutely the biggest challenge for you as art director of this piece?
I mean, to be honest, like as an art director, like I didn't have to do too much of the technical things. Like I was able to rely on Nick and Dan, who were already very much of an expert in that medium. So for me, actually, what was the most challenging was finding the balance of what would look polished versus kind of handmade painterly style, because we wanted this film to feel very handmade, and there's something very tactile about like watercolor blend and way things are shaded. But there are, you know, a lot of times I can get kind of picky where it's like, can we just make the brush strokes a little thinner, or like, you know, tiny little things that could change the idea of like, oh, is it quickly paint, like a roughly painted versus painterly polished painting. I think that is a very fine line of difference where, but Nick and Dan pulled it off beautifully, which was always magical to come into a meeting and like, whoa, like you guys nailed it. But yeah, I mean, that is definitely a fun part for me too, as much as it is challenging.
Thank you. So Vanessa, Namoo's been described as a narrative poem that comes to life. And as the editor, it's your team has said how, you know, you've been creatively instrumental in ways that play into this narrative and this poem cinematography. You know, your sense of pacing, placement, movement, all of these elements. Can you tell us a little more about this and maybe give us an example of a scene where that really came into play?
Yeah, well, again, I mean, piggybacking on what I'd said previously, it really is a translation in that, for the most part, we had to completely rebuild. It was a complete rebuild of language. It was a complete rebuild of camera and camera shots, simply because, you know, you can't just take a VR and put one camera here and then tell the story. That's not really a translation. That would just be like as if you were to put a camera in the middle of a theater space and just film the proscenium play out. That would be sure, that's a way you could do it, but it was just not the way Eric and the team and everybody really wanted to go with it. So to make a cinematic version, it's completely rebuilding the language, so completely rebuilding shots. So, I mean, for a great example is the very end, it's such an emotionally, beautifully impactful ending, going into the universe like that and following this man's journey. And it's just, that's such a powerful, it needs to hit so hard, and it does. But if you look at it from a VR perspective, it's a very different way of getting that same emotion, but the emotion's still the same. They're still there. It's impactful either way. And so a lot of that at the end, for us to really hit that on a cinematic 2D version, took a lot of, when do we close in? When do we actually get close to the man? Like, when does it really matter that we, get close up to him versus it being about the relationship between the tree and the man? So I know in the very beginning for me, a lot of the conversation with Eric in the start was about like, okay, this is about a relationship, but it's also a relationship that is really a relationship with himself, but yet there's still a representation of the inner person with this tree. So it has to be all about the tree and the man, the tree and the man, the tree and the man. So for the end to really hit, we had to keep it about the tree and the man until the very end, when it's like, here we go, here's his face. And even then we keep some of the tree in there, because ultimately it is about the two coming together and the relationship, and then the fusion of that, because they are the same, they're one and the same. But it's a very different language. We had close-ups, we had, just different way of telling that pacing of that at the end than it is in the VR experience, but with the same impact. So that's essentially what we did through every single, sequence of the short. That same thinking.
Cool. Thanks for outlining that for us. Eric, I have a question for you, but first I want to remind all of you who are watching along that we'd love to get questions from you. So if there's anything you want to ask, click on that Q&A button at the bottom of the Zoom window and let us know. So Eric, I'm just curious, what were some of the big changes that you made from that very first image in your head and that very first drawing that you showed us during your presentation to the final piece?
I mean, what's interesting is that a lot of things didn't change, but a lot of things changed. So basically the core concept of the man growing a tree, the way you saw, and then it turns out to be a red, beautiful tree, and it flies to the space and become a star. That iconic, tentpole of the piece has been always there, but everything else was rediscovered, explored in a much, much deeper level. It was a combination of getting deeper into myself, also a combination of discussing as a whole with other artists in the room, because we wanted to create something that could resonate with a lot of people, not just, even though it's coming from, really personal space. So that was really it. One good example is before previous kind of generic. It was one person's life, but it became a painter's life. So in a way, while diving deeper, we were able to be much specific and authentic enough to deal with more of painter's life matter, and also the bit of a Korean flair as well, because I'm coming from Korean origin. So I was attracting a lot of stories from my personal life. So those things were all new that didn't exist before. And then on top of everything, as Vanessa pointed out, became, not only cinematic version, but also VR content. So there was a new exploration and far beyond what I imagined in the first place. So those are some of the big changes between the first idea, initial thought, and how it came out.
So we have a question from one of our viewers. Is there a way for the public to see the VR version of the film?
Yes, the news is coming soon, so I can't say yet, but you should hear something in the next couple weeks. But yeah, we will be releasing
Next couple of, I think.
Yeah.
All right, so folks, stay tuned.
Thank you.
And then we have another question asking, and I'm guessing this would be for Eric. How has your family received this film?
Oh my God, yeah. So basically, I made many films so far, but I never seen my mom crying that hard right after watching this film. So she couldn't stop crying for about literally 5-10 minutes, and there was a really gave me so much mixed up emotions, almost like very sad, but also very therapeutic healing emotion. Because like even from general audience, I hope you guys feel it. But from my direct family members, like my mom, who experienced this together, like all this object, for example, oh my God, that's a plush toy you used to play around when you were a kid. She was able to recognize all those little things. So maybe that way. So to me, what making film to me is being able to share it and getting action and getting feedback, or this communication and this conversation is the all part of the filmmaking to me. So when I share it with
Oh,
able to out that film, that was all part of the journey to me. So that was my family's immediate reactions. So, yeah.
that's incredibly touching. We are quickly running out of time, but Kane, I wanted to ask you, so the film is executive produced by John Cho. How did his involvement come to happen?
He saw the film pretty early, an earlier version of the film, and responded to Eric's vision for it right away, and wanted to know how he could help. And we're in a way the movie is about sort of honoring those who came before us, and someone like John Cho, I think, has had such an impact on Asian American, Korean American, Korean filmmakers like Eric, Eusong, myself, who, growing up didn't know that we could even create movies like Namoo that could have, such a personal and cultural incorporation of our lives into it. So, he was very moved by sort of the message of the film and the way you might be able to interpret it. And, we just felt it would be very fitting to have him support it in all the ways that he has been. So it's been really exciting to have him join us as part of the journey. Short films are gems that are harder for people to discover. So the more support we can get from sort of the bigger lights that can be shown on them, we're very appreciative and grateful for that from John and from all of you.
Oh, that's terrific. Sadly, we have run out of time here, but I wanted to thank all of you, Eric and Vanessa and Nick and Kane and Eusong. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights about the making of this lovely film. And a big thank you to all of you watching along, asifa-hollywood members, who gave us your time and attention. We hope you enjoyed. And I think that's it, folks. Thank you.
Jennifer.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Thanks.